steamy card intended for his girlfriend, and the mistress got the message and made it clear he was never leaving his wife. He must have worried which woman was going to kill him first and what florist she would use to decorate his final resting place. On 1-800-Flowers, this arrangement could be dubbed Deadhead Bouquet, and FTD stands for Failure to Deceive. I halted my deep reverie of the misery of my divorce court sorority sisters and other sublime to ridiculous tales of broken love, and returned to the matter at hand. There were 2 men in my bedroom, one of whom used to sleep there, cleaning out the master's closet. Boxes and garbage bags were filled to overflowing. I'll tell you what I think is the best thing to do. Well, I was all ears. He said, if I were you, I'd have a handsome younger guy over, dress sexy, maybe something flimsy, and tell the ex to keep it down, you're trying to create a mood here. I too burst out laughing, as my ex didn't notice when I dressed sexy when we were together. Somehow I thought this strategy would be lost on him. Ding dong. I opened the door to a man who I now realized had never entered through the front door. So am I supposed to be a gracious hostess? Oh, welcome to my home. Would you like something to drink? Here, drink out of these glasses. This is your set, so if you break one. Should I have had something in the oven just to make the house smell good, like we did when we were trying to sell the first house or even the downtown condo before we got on the suburban track? Demonstrate what a homey place this is. Nah, recalling the dismissive attitudes from years of my great home-cooked meals, this would be another message lost. We stood silent for a minute in the foyer. The dogs sniffed their shoes and looked to me for approval, which I granted. I've been so curious as to which room would be the first selected to be dismantled. I figured it would be the office, the man cave. Boy, wrong call on that. Into the living room to the board games. The board games? This was the most urgent category? There went Deluxe Scrabble, Sharpshooters, Upwards, Boggle, and the Boggle Dictionary. Trivial Pursuit. Trivial Pursuit. Now that should be a new game to describe divorce court. Along with new visions of sorry, not, risk, as in getting married in the first place, Monopoly, where one tries to get all the valuable properties on their side of the ledger and the other gets railroaded. There went all the fun we once had as a family. Even the sequence game he had gotten me for a gift. All tossed haphazardly into box number 1. He left me one deck of cards. Thoughtful.
We realized later, well, wait a minute, they do have a common thread. In their own way, they touch on the subject of survival. Not survival in big ways, like in the movie The Revenant, where Leonardo DiCaprio's character survives a grizzly bear attack in harsh conditions, but in small ways that in some cases are more relatable to our everyday lives. So here's our lineup for tonight. Julie Isaacson will be telling us a moving story about surviving her divorce. Denise Kirschenbaum will share a story about surviving high school and finding her true self. Bob Rubin will bring us a blast from the past in his story of surviving disappointment in his yearning for rock and roll fame. And finally, by popular demand, Rick Leslie brings back his riveting story about how he survived meeting a stranger on a train. By the way, we're going to be using some sound effects and songs in Bob Rubin's story, which inspired us to find song titles to reference in the introductions to all the other stories. So see if you can spot them.
Next hit record, I'm just putting the chord pattern together. It's going to be called Marlene. That was 1956. I was 15 years old. I wanted so badly to be the next Buddy Holly, Jerry Lee Lewis, or Elvis Presley. I was actually starting to write my first songs, and I thought, it's time to put a group together. So I got Joel, and Billy, and Horace. Horace played the upright bass. He was black. I thought it was so cool to have a black guy in the group at that time. The only problem was none of us could really sing. Not a problem. We'd go to the studio, we'd crank up the reverb, and everything would be great. So we went there, we pulled our $100 together, went to the studio to do the first song, Marlene. After several takes, it wasn't right, but after an hour and a half, our money was gone. We took what we had, took the acetates that they were called at the time, and we decided, well, what are we going to do now? Well, I had a friend, his name was Bob Shane. He was well connected through his father. And I said, Bob, get your dad to do something. Who's going to listen to this? Who's going to be interested in this? So he got us an audience with Marty Fay. Now, I don't know if you know who Marty Fay was, but in the 50s and 60s, he was a radio talk show host. He was caustic. Everyone loved to hate Marty Fay. So we went to his office one day. He smirked, he looked at me, and he said, Bob says you have some talent. Yeah, a little bit, Mr. Fay. Well, we decided that he would put on this record, and we sat there on the edge of our seats, and this is what he heard. He looked at us, he looked at me in the eye, and he said, that sounds like 4 guys farting. Oh my God, we were devastated. We thanked him for his time. We walked out of there, and stardom was not to be that day. In September '59, I went to the University of Iowa. First thing I did, I joined a fraternity. We started our own group, Bobby and the Pledges. We actually were pretty good. We played fraternity parties, events around the campus. We knocked them dead with songs like Run Around Sue and Poetry in Motion and others of the day. And then we decided we were going to go to Cedar Rapids, where there was a recording studio, and record about 8 or 10 of my new songs. So we did that. Came back, it was pretty darn good. It was winter break. I called my friend Bob Shane and said, Bob, I think we're really ready now. So what did his dad do this time? He got us an audition with Chess Records. Oh my God, I was beside myself, being the same stable as, who's in Chess Records? Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, Muddy Waters. Oh my God, what could be better than that? So the day of the audition came. We were on Michigan Avenue in the studio, all set up for our first song, and Howie Rubman, our drummer, fell off his stool. Cymbals went flying everywhere, and it was downhill from there. No stardom that day. We're lucky they didn't throw us out of Chess Records. So in 1963, I graduated, went home, married my high school sweetheart, was going to go into my father's law firm, so I went to law school, going to live happily ever after. It didn't quite work out that way. The marriage fizzled, the law degree fizzled, and it was a perfect time to try rock and roll music again. No, I'm not going to quit. So in 1964, I started a new and better band, and I wrote what I thought was, and still do think was, one of my better songs. It was called Please Keep the Beatles in England. It was the only Beatles protest record I think ever done. And one of the lines was this. Before the Beatles started fooling around, I had the cutest little girl in town. She liked the way I combed my hair before, but she don't like it anymore. Here's what it sounded like.
64, it's interesting.
Well, we brought it to Chess Records. They loved it. They loved it. They printed all kinds of promotional copies on the Argo label. That's where they put the token white guys. And they brought it around to all the stations. Their promo guys knocked on every door they could. Not a single DJ would play the record. The Beatles were so hot at the time, the record got shelved. And ironically enough, it got its first airplay 48 years later on WXRT, Terry Humberville, Breakfast with the Beatles. She thought it was adorable, a small consolation for yours truly. Then it happened, I thought. In 1966, I put a record together called I'll Show You How to Love. It went something like this. Well, I thought I had the inside track because I was working for a record distributor at the time. Bill Cassidy, who was the promotional guy for Warner Brothers Records, said, Bob, I will get this played, I'll get a hit record for you, and here's the deal. You give me half of all the profits. Well, it didn't sound that reasonable, but I had nothing else going. So I said, okay, Bill, let's do it. And he was right about the first part. It actually got on the charts. It got to number 38 in Chicago. Went off slightly after that, but we cracked the barrier. It was the first time that ever happened to me. So about a week later,
we kind of thought of when we heard your story. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more. Our next story is another sort of survival story about surviving high school. So even if you're the kind of person who absolutely loved high school, there were still bound to be moments when you were on the roller coaster ride that is adolescence. Maybe you got some inspiration back in the day from listening to music to get you past some of those rough patches. They say that especially in today's society, a high school student's brain, I couldn't believe when I read this, is roughly 90% song lyrics. From anthems about embracing individuality to songs about fitting in. For example, in one of Taylor Swift's songs, she sings, she wears high heels, I wear sneakers, she's cheer captain, and I'm on the bleachers. And can any of us ever forget Janice Ian's, or Ian, I think is how you say it, at 17, what a poignant song. And when she sings, I learned the truth at 17, that love was meant for beauty queens. In her story, Denise Kirschenbaum reminisces about her teenage angst and her longing to be the it girl in high school. So please welcome Denise and her Stacey Bone story entitled Bone.
Bon, my teacher, Miss Scott, declares upon entering the second period of French class. But for me, today is not bon, which most of you know means good. In fact, this year, my junior year, more than halfway through already, has been decidedly not bon. I keep waiting for high school to morph into something fantastic. Exciting, successful, romantic, everything my mother's yearbooks, which I'd spent countless hours poring over, promised. Clearly, my mother had been the it girl in high school. She'd been super successful, an A student, a superb musician, popular, pretty, she always had a boyfriend. She was the May Queen, the editor of the school newspaper, the first-year French horn player in state band, 4 years running. After high school, her life continued to school out successfully. College, a handsome husband, 2 children, a rewarding career in music. I studied my mother's yearbooks and photo albums as if they were atlases to exotic and wonderful places. But instead, I might as well have been trying to use an outdated county map to lead me to the moon. My music career, over before it really started. My boyfriends, non-existent. Sure, I had friends, but my closest friend Jean was spending junior year in South America, and the others, Sue, Sandy, Kathy, were engrossed in chemistry experiments and calculus problems. I was being left behind and I didn't get it. I felt smart enough, but something seemed to be lacking. All through grade school, I'd effortlessly scored A's. But I'd been tripped up in 8th grade algebra, not understanding the story problems. Throughout freshman year, Algebra 2, it got worse. Frustrated, I began a dangerous pattern of dropping classes, something none of the other kids seemed to be doing. So while my college-bound friends matriculated to trigonometry and physics, I dropped geometry and chemistry, replacing them instead with another art class and German. Failing tests and arguing with teachers was stressful. I wasn't sleeping much, except in class. Last semester, I'd fallen asleep while my classmates were conjugating German verbs. My head on my desk in a pool of sunshine streaming through the window of the stuffy classroom. I'd slept so soundly that the teacher had actually had to tap me on the shoulder to wake me. I had slept right through the bell. Startled, I looked around wildly. All the other desks were empty. Flooded with shame, I'd slunk out of the classroom saying nothing. That was the last German class that I attended. Now, looking out the window over the large field where we played field hockey, my heart thudded heavily. Ringed by woods, the formerly green grass was brown now. The sky, a dull gray.
Well, that was a big hit. These products became standard equipment for all of the musicians that were out there at the time. Now in 1957, I remember hearing a song. I was in high school and I was mesmerized by this and I couldn't get it out of my mind. I built